fisherman. Bass knew about fishing from the times Sugar, that's his grandfather's nickname, Sugar had taken him to the river to catch catfish and stripers. His grandmother, though, compared white people's work to making a stew, how she didn't like a lot of carrying on around her either, how it looked easy at the end when she was just stirring a pot. But Bass mustn't be fooled. Auntie Toddy presented yet a different perspective by using her needlework, the truth of the backside of a pillow cover versus the front, while his mother prepared him for bondage by telling Bible stories. Jonah and the big fish, about nothing but patience. Abraham and Isaac, just trust the knife won't fall. Pray, son, you praying for patience. Jesus on the cross, if that ain't it, what is? Bass prayed for patience nightly. He knew he needed some, a whole lot even, because he wanted to kill bad guys, like those in the Bible stories, with urgency. He could feel the call to set things right and couldn't stand doing nothing. He'd lie awake at night making up songs about it. I had a butcher knife, hid and dug it up, 'cause I seen Abraham with Isaac and knowed a boy needed hook. Lickety-click, I did run and I throwed that daddy off. Never again, I said, and cut off his head. Then I and Isaac hit the body in a trough. Now, I'm just making that up. I'm just trying to have a little fun and come up with what none of his songs lasted, have been preserved. But he loved to create songs and sing songs throughout his life. Even when he was tracking down an outlaw, he'd make up a song kind of to taunt the lawman, I'm coming for you. So it was fun for me to kind of make up some songs every once in a while. That's the first one in the trilogy as a child, imagining the unfair treatment of a boy about to be killed by his father. Perlily discouraged such song singing, that's his mother, afraid he'd grow up to be an outlaw, and that's true. She thought he's going to grow up to be an outlaw. He likes to kill too much. He has almost like too strong of a sense for justice. And to offset his songs and the games he organized with other boys in which they'd act out his songs, she would dream up a random task for him and then complicate it. Iron this here pile of clothes while I finish up them frog legs, she might tell him, making him think she was about to fry up a batch, when her intention all along was to sit in front of him, lazy as you please, and eat a batch of frog legs and not say them any. Or she'd let him think so, until he stopped flinching outwardly about what was right or wrong or unfair. Sometimes they talked about these lessons after the fact, but usually they didn't. Never during the daily tutelage of his grandparents or in the nightly care of his mother and auntie, when among the slaves in the slave quarters, did he hear anyone utter what they were. As far as Bass knew, there were white people and there were Negroes, and they had separate duties, all important but different, with white people simply being busier in the head with invisible work, which explained why it was harder to do and demanded more peace and quiet and standing and sitting still. Not until late summer, after he turned 8 at cotton picking time, was he confronted with the notion of slavery. Everyone in the cabin had groaned about it more and more as the time grew closer, until the night before the first harvest, when everyone grew quieter. Uncle Mosley, who was not his uncle, sang a song in the dark after everyone settled down for sleep. He sang low and deep as if to a baby, and verses grew longer as he went along. You gon' pick that cotton like you be told. You gon' pick that cotton till you be old. You gon' pick that cotton like they balls of snow. You gon' pick that cotton, be wishing it be cold. You gon' pick that cotton, tweet, tweet, like a little robin. You gon' pick that cotton, 'cause wings broke and you tired of sobbing. Bass snickered initially, thinking others would too or might sing along, but Uncle Mosley was on his own tonight. So Bass stopped listening to the words, and Uncle Mosley's voice became an easy lowness to fall asleep to. In the morning, Perlily announced to Bass that he wasn't staying behind anymore, but was going to the field because he was a man now and needed to work the fields like a man. Bass would remember clenching his fist to feel what the fist of a man felt like as he ran ahead of his mother to tag along with older boys who were not much taller as a lot, some shorter, and he would remember recognizing how out of place the overseer first appeared because of the expression of boredom on his face. An overseer is kind of like a guard. Because of the expression of boredom on his face, even as he stood at the corner of a cotton field in full bloom, the most beautiful thing Bass had ever seen. The whiteness seemed to have no end to it. He would also remember wondering how anyone with a whip tucked into his belt could appear that bored. On the ground near the overseer was a pile of burlap sacks, and each of Bass's friends and neighbors from the quarters grabbed a sack before entering a row. Bass ran to pick one up before they were gone. Bass, son, his mother called. Come here, boy. Bass hung the sack around his shoulders like everyone else was doing, and it dragged the ground between his feet as he ran over to her. Purtily took his hands and pulled him in closer. You make your family proud today, Bass. You got a job to do, and that's all that matters. You be patient at it and perfect at it. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. You're a slave, and this is slavery. And what that means is Master Reeves had the right to tell us what to do because he owned this whole plantation and everything on it, including me and you and everyone. That'd be why he's so busy, why we respect him so much. He take care of us, make sure we eat and get by. Now it's your turn to do your part. You hear? We're here to be thankful. What about the cotton? What about it? He owned it too? That's right, son, every bowl. And that white man yonder too? No, none of the white folks, only colored folks as slaves. Now listen to me, she said. Don't be aggravating nobody. You growing up today, and that's that. Yes, ma'am, Bass said. He would remember smiling at his mother while she looked about to cry. Come here, she told him. She held him tight against her apron, then shooed him away. So, does that deserve some context? Do you feel like you sort of understand the mother's perspective? Why she's trying to convince him not to be rebellious? Follow the rules. Listen. Be patient. She's trying to make sure he survives, right? An important lesson, I think, later. So when he's facing outlaws, be patient. You don't have to burst in. You don't have to pull your gun. You might not need your gun. Be patient. Be observant. Be aware of your surroundings. Locate where the suspects are. Size them up. Size everything up. And then make a plan about how you're going to do it without doing it violently, which could lead to your own death. Return to Black Lives Matter. Wow, that just sort of seems like an example we could still learn from. Can't we avoid just jumping to conclusions? It's not true black people have always been on the wrong side of the law. Bass Reeves is a reminder, been on the right side and done it well when given a chance, right? So when I saw this example of a human being, an American, I thought I couldn't turn away, even though the obvious, right? White man. How are people going to take what I do, my work? White man studies black man. I don't want to be what's called I didn't think I had a savior complex, but I have to say, Craig Dandridge, a good friend of mine from campus school, looked out for me and beat up a bully for me. So there's a part of me that wants to return a favor. to the good people I've met in my life. All right, that was from Follow the Angels, Follow the Doves. Here's another aspect of his character that I think tells you a lot about why he decided to approach law enforcement the way he did. And I think it just goes directly to his faith. A side note, I'd like to share a little bit of the behind the scenes information about books as well as TV show. So when I finished my books and was looking for an agent, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm going back. In the beginning, I had an agent. I'm forgetting. I've been through so much in my life. I've gone through agents like they were candy. All right, so in the beginning, all right, I'm working. I have a New York agent, and she's waiting to read this Bass Reeves book. I finally finished the first one, and I get it to her. And I'm proud. She was working at a prominent agency, and she wrote back a couple of weeks later, "I'm sorry, I can't represent this. I got to turn it down. This main character of yours is like way too religious for me." It's like, well, historically, Bass Reeves was faithful. I had to make him portray him how I thought he should be portrayed as a faithful man. And how would he incorporate that faith? How could he have faith in himself in situations when the odds or the tables were turned and where there could have been 4 or 5. One time he was ambushed by a gang of 4 individuals. They had their guns on him. And he stayed calm and patient and abided his time and found an opportunity to distract. And he turned that whole situation around and took in 4 prisoners. Because he didn't panic. And so this agent tells me, he's too religious. It's like, wow, okay. So I had trouble selling my books in New York. Maybe that was a key reason. I'm thankful that when the TV show came around, when they were looking for a story, it didn't bother them. And I thought, well, everything I thought I knew about book people and Hollywood people got turned upside down. I thought the book people would be the more progressive. And Hollywood would be just unforgiving. They would have certain ideas, and if you gave them something they didn't expect, they would reject it. It's got to fit like a cookie cutter pattern. But that wasn't true in this case. They welcomed Bass Reeves as a faithful man when New York, over and over and over, just said, we're not interested. It's kind of interesting. So thanks to the University of Nebraska Press, who publishes a lot of literature about the West, I got published. But this goes to the heart of his faith here in this scene. So he's arrested a few prisoners, and when he was in camp with his prisoners, he took the opportunity to preach to them. He thought maybe he could just turn them around. Maybe they just needed to hear some inspiration. Thomas and Wayne followed Bass with squinted eyes as he approached and then passed them. Off behind the wagons, the horses dreamily munched their oats. Bass stopped in front of Webb. I was mentioning Jim Webb earlier, the meanest man Bass ever had to arrest. So we've got 2 brothers, Thomas and Wayne and Webb, sitting chained in this camp at night. Bass is there, and he's got his posseman, or kind of like a sidekick, Floyd Wilson, a white man with him, Floyd. Bass stopped in front of Webb. He brushed his coat open and set his hands on his hips. "I want you three knowing why I'm taking you in," he said. "And it ain't just what's on those writs. That's why the law wants you. But why do I? Other than the money, I mean, and the money's good, don't get me wrong, and y'all make it good indeed, but how do I make it good?" Webb continued to gaze where he'd been gazing, as if Bass still stood on the other side of the fire, while Wayne looked down at his own lap and rolled his bottom lip over the straggled ends of his mustache, while Thomas locked onto Bass with a sneer. "Think about what you see in the daytime when you look up at the sky," Bass said. "You don't see stars, do you? You see blue color and clouds too, and the sun and sometimes the moon, but mostly it's that solid blue straight across, like the surface of a lake. Weird, ain't it?" He tipped his head back and pushed his brim back to look at what appeared to be a lake itself, the sky banked all around by treetops. "There the stars are at night, but during the day they hid." He lowered his head and corrected his brim. Webb hadn't budged. Wayne stared only at his boots or at dirt or at nothing. Thomas continued to sneer and simmer as if that alone could untrack back Bass's mind. Bass returned Thomas's stare with a smile. "That's like how God be. Sometimes you see him, and sometimes you don't. But that don't mean he ain't always there, ain't always watching you." He nodded and eyed Wayne again, still stubbornly gazing down. "I imagine you feel you ain't seen much of him in your life, and that's why you got caught up in what you have. Well, that's the day. You ain't seen him, but he there. In fact, he hearing me right now talking to you. Why, I want y'all to think of me as Mr. Nighttime. Because night or not, cloudy, don't matter. I be bringing you the news of his presence and his glory and his law." Thomas snorted long, dragging his sinuses clear. "Boy," Floyd said, "you spit that on him, I will get up from here and bleed you out if he don't." Bass kicked the sole of one of Wayne's boots. "You don't say much." Wayne tensed his shoulders but refused to look up. "You must be scared. You must be hearing me." "Go to damn hell, Mr. Nighttime," Webb said. The cold irons whipped their heads toward Webb and laughed. Thomas spat in the fire. Bass backed away and saw Webb still staring vaguely ahead over the fire, as if preferring to remember Bass at some point in the past to actually looking at him. "Boys," Bass nodded. He stretched out on his bedroll next to Floyd on his and shut his eyes under the tilt of his hat. He always slept best in camp after emptying his heart, sleeping as if he were under the open night with his own family. Now, the TV show does spend some time focusing on the home front while he's away. His wife Jenny and the kids, and his being away may have contributed to some trouble in the family. Several of his sons got into trouble with the law. One actually commits murder. And this is years later, but out of respect for Bass, other lawmen turned down the writ for his son, Benji, or Benjamin.